This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. Starting the show is K-State veterinarian Gregg Hanzlicek, as he informs cattle producers about weak calf syndrome and what the diagnostic lab is most commonly seeing as the cause of it this year. Ernie Minton, Dean of the College of Agriculture and Director of K-State Research and Extension, continues today's show by reviewing his top stories from his recent statewide newsletter. K-State horticultural entomologist Raymond Cloyd ends the show by discussing Brood 19 and Brood 13 cicadas that will be emerging this spring, and clover mites and the eastern tint caterpillar. That and more is coming up ahead on Agriculture Today. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Thursday show discussing weak calf syndrome with K-State veterinarian in the diagnostic lab in the College of Veterinary Medicine, Gregg Hanzlicek. Gregg, thanks for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
Gregg, is weak calf syndrome what it sounds like it is?
It is. It's calves that are born alive, and there's a way to test that, are born alive but either do not get up to nurse, or maybe they're slow to get up to nurse. But yeah, they're born alive, but they're weak.
And what are some different causes for those calves being weak?
Well, the first thing we ask is if there's multiple of these calves, are these calves coming out of first calf heifers? Because a lot of times it's just that we've got a dystocia and they're tired and they're hurt from being pulled or just taking too long to be born. So that's the first thing to rule out. And then, at least for me, from the cases that we follow, a protein deficiency with an energy deficiency in the dams diet are the second most common causes that we see of weak calf syndrome.
And what are some few other things besides protein or maybe having trouble getting into the world?
Well, there's the things the third one on the list, at least for me, would be vitamin A. We see a lot of vitamin A deficiency. But this year, it's a little strange, and in the last 2 weeks, we've had multiple cases of weak calf syndrome in central and western Kansas that we've determined to be a vitamin E deficiency. So that's why I wanted to talk about it today. It's a little bit different than most years.
And before we dive a little bit farther into vitamin E, is there one more cause that you more regularly see for weak calf syndrome?
Well, there is, and it goes with vitamin E, and that's selenium. They work together; they're synergistic. So, yeah, sometimes we'll determine whether it's E or selenium. Could be either or. Absolutely, yep.
Before the interview, Gregg, you mentioned that it's unusual to have vitamin E be the cause of so many cases of weak calf syndrome. And so, why do you think it might be happening this year?
Well, we're scratching our head a little bit, but vitamin E levels in green forages is extremely high. So we don't have to worry about supplementing much vitamin E for cows on pasture. But is it possible that because we went through a drought and our grass turned dormant in central and western Kansas, that the vitamin E level of the pasture grass was low? And then as hay is harvested and then stored, the vitamin E content goes down. Not as quickly as vitamin A, but it still goes down. So is it the fact that we didn't have all the green forages that we needed during the pasture season? And then on top of it, for winter feed, we're feeding hays that are extremely low in vitamin E also.
And as we're thinking about things being low in vitamin E, you mentioned that mineral oftentimes doesn't have as much in it as you wish it did.
Well, for some of us, and there's not really good guidelines on how much vitamin E that an adult beef cow needs, but if you look at the last NRC requirements, they need more than what most of our minerals have in them. And for a lot of us, we want at least 1,000 to 2,000 international units per pound of mineral, that's vitamin E, and we're considering a 3-ounce intake by the cow. So you look at a lot of minerals, there's 50, maybe 100 international units per pound. So a lot of our supplements are really, really low in vitamin E.
Is this something that you see cows presenting with being low in vitamin E, or really just in the calves?
Yeah, we don't really see clinical signs vitamin E in the dams. It manifests itself in the calf at birth or just before birth.
And so what can people maybe be doing if they are having stillborn calves?
Well, if you're having stillborn calves, let's try to figure it out. So always work with your veterinarian to try to figure out some things. And if we need some diagnostics, there's a lot of diagnostics that can be done. if the veterinarian suspects vitamin E, then there's a couple things that we can do. We can grab some blood samples from the dams to see what their vitamin E status is, because that'll tell us what's in the calves. If we've got calves on the ground, we can actually look at their vitamin E level in the blood, or unfortunately, if we have some of these weak calves that die, a liver sample from the calf is very important. And then we just run a vitamin E level on those, a test on those to determine whether they're deficient or not.
If the lab has distinguished, or any lab has distinguished, that they are low in vitamin E and for the herd, what maybe should that producer do?
Well, at the beginning, to really get out of it, there are vitamin E injections out there. So again, work with the veterinarian. Some of them are vitamin E with selenium. There's A, D, and E's. There's all kinds of products out there. But for a short-term fix, maybe running everybody through that hasn't calved yet and give them an injection might be appropriate. But certainly from that point on, especially the next year, when we get into winter feed, we'd want a mineral that has the appropriate amount of vitamin E or higher than what most of the minerals are. And
when giving vitamin E, can you give too much of it?
Vitamin E is extremely safe. It's almost hard to be toxic, but if it's selenium, can be very toxic. So if it's a combination of the two, we've got to be careful. Vitamin A can be toxic. So if it's an A, D, and E injection, we've got to be careful there. But we can feed basically as much vitamin E as we want. The reason it's not in minerals at a very high level is it's probably the most expensive ingredient we can put in a mineral. And we never think all the producers know what mineral prices are today. They're already sky high. So putting more in there is just going to increase the cost.
And going back to real fast, looking at diagnosing those animals, is that something that the producers can pull that blood themselves, or they should really have a vet do it?
Well, they can pull the blood for themselves. In Kansas, we as a diagnostic lab, we have to accept producer samples. They don't have to go through a veterinarian. I still advise them to go through their veterinarian at least to try to determine what they need to do. And then on that point, just taking one sample from one animal in the herd, I don't think you can really come up with a diagnosis, because in any herd we're going to have a few animals that are deficient in anything and some animals that are normal. And so if we just take one sample and it comes back normal, we don't know if maybe we are deficient. If it comes back deficient, we don't really know if it's a whole herd thing or just for that animal. So I like 3 samples. I think if we have 3 that are deficient, then that gives us a good diagnosis that we've got a deficiency.
And as we're talking about this, that is just one of the many things that the diagnostic lab here at K-State can test for.
Absolutely. We'll test for all the pathogens or the organisms that can do this, the viruses and the bacteria and those kind of things. And then if we need to, that's when we start looking at the minerals and especially the vitamins.
Where can people find out more information about what the diagnostic lab is capable of doing?
Well, we go to our website, ksvdl.org, or they can just call the lab at 866-512-5650, and if they could just ask for Gregg, Dr. Hanzlicek, and we'll work through the problem.
Gregg, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and share with us some information about weak calf syndrome.
My pleasure.
That was Kansas State University veterinarian in the diagnostic lab at K-State's College of Veterinary Medicine, Gregg Hanzlicek. You can find out more information about the Kansas State Veterinary Diagnostic Laboratory by going to their website, ksvdl.org. Again, that is ksvdl.org. I will link that in today's show notes on agtoday.net. Also in the show notes, you will find the phone number that he mentioned, which is 866-512-5650. You can call that if you're trying to get a hold of the diagnostic lab. Again, that is 866-512-5650. I would just like to remind you that there are many different tests that the Kansas State Veterinary Diagnostic Lab can run, and so looking at the website is a great way to figure out all those different things that they could help you with. Before we cut to a break now, we're going to be joined by Scarlett Maydinger as she discusses how the USDA has brought in a disaster assistance program that will prove beneficial to some Kansas producers.
USDA recently announced changes to the Emergency Livestock Assistance Program that provide additional support to producers who suffer wildfire losses of stockpiled forage during the winter months. Previously, ELAP covered only the normal grazing season in Kansas. For 2024 and subsequent program years, the ELAP policy has been updated to extend the normal grazing season to 365 days per year for perennial forages only. Senator Roger Marshall led the charge for this change to the program, working with other senators in 2023 to add language to the Livestock Disaster Relief Act that would ensure future losses of the same nature are covered under the Emergency Livestock Assistance Program. USDA did confirm with Senator Marshall that this ELAP change retroactively will help Kansas producers who suffered losses during the four-county fire in December 2021, which burned 163,000 acres in Ellis, Rooks, Russell, and Osborne counties and destroyed winter pasture in use. Officials with the State Farm Service Agency office are working to establish guidance regarding the changes to the Emergency Livestock Assistance Program. Producers can expect to hear more on the revisions made to ELAP from FSA in the coming days. For more information, call your local FSA office. I'm Scarlett Madinger.
Once again, that was Kansas Livestock Association's Scarlett Madinger. You can find more from the Kansas Livestock Association by going to their website, www.kla.org. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but stick around because when we come back, we'll be joined by K-State's College of Agriculture Dean and Director of K-State Research and Extension, Ernie Minton, as he provides an update from his February statewide e-newsletter. We're cutting to that short break now, but we'll be right back. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our Thursday show discussing the recent statewide e-newsletter from the Dean of the College of Agriculture and Director of K-State Research and Extension, Ernie Minton. Ernie, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and share with us some information from your recent statewide.
Well, it's great to be here and share this good information.
Ernie, your statewide involves many articles within it, and one of the first topics that's mentioned and we've spent a lot of time talking about because it is so important, water.
Yes, it really is such an important topic. The Ogallala High Plains Aquifer, its longer but more official name, is really tremendously important, not just to our state, but 8 or 9 states from Texas up to North Dakota have access to this, the largest aquifer in the world, actually. But it really does drive the western Kansas economy in particular. And so the key, though, is it doesn't easily recharge. And so we have to look at ways to stretch this resource as far as we possibly can. So it's a really, really important effort for us here at K-State.
And Ernie, there's a lot of different organizations working together to hopefully be able to find a way to slow the use of the Ogallala Aquifer. Yeah,
the story features the Kansas Center for Agriculture and the Rural Environment, or K-CARE, and that's headed by a very capable person, Dr. Susan Metzger. A lot of these functions are coordinated under K-CARE, but it works with a number of agencies. And I might just mention that it's not mentioned in this particular article, but one of the K-State priorities this year asked to the Kansas legislature is to establish a Kansas Water Institute here at K-State. And so we're happy to lead that. We have the people that have the know-how, and we're used to collaborating across state.
And another thing mentioned in your recent statewide conferences for farm and ranch transition. And while they're already done, there's still plenty of resources at K-State to share with farm and ranch transition. And why is that something that's really important to Kansas?
Well, I think that as you look at the demographics of farms in Kansas, and of course, just like the rest of the United States, there's been a great deal of consolidation. So there are fewer and fewer farms. But the other thing that's happening is that the age of those landholders is obviously getting older and older. And so transitioning that property and the operation to the next generation becomes even more critical. And because of the complexities of some of these businesses, K-State Research and Extension has some effort that's on our website at Ag Transitions. headed by Ashley Westerholz. So this is a really great service that K-State Extension provides for the citizens of Kansas.
Something else important to Kansas State University, K-State 105 and it working to aid entrepreneurship in Kansas.
Yeah, the K-State 105 effort, just to remind folks, is part of the Economic Prosperity Plan that began to come together actually as President Myers was finishing up his term here as president and then now transitioning to President Linton. But it's part of the Kansas Board of Regents Economic Prosperity Plan. And really what it seeks to do is leverage K-State's presence in all 105 counties of Kansas and thus its name. And so this is a really good story about an opportunity that was recorded on K-State's First Friday e-call a couple of weeks back, which really provides information about access of entrepreneurs and local businesses to capital, community, and customers. Really good piece.
Entrepreneurship, something really important to Kansas and can support people financially throughout the whole state then.
That's right. Entrepreneurs are typically individuals who start small businesses, and this represents a greater slice of the employee growth pool than one would suspect. So it was a really great piece, and I encourage folks to take a close look at it.
Ernie, you mentioned the First Friday e-call. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that is?
Yeah, that's a really great new thing that is put on by K-State Research and Extension, a monthly online series that helps nurture small businesses and inspire entrepreneurship in Kansas. So it really kind of hits a timely mark.
And is that something people can check out even if they missed the live call?
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I took a quick look at it on the web and listened to the story that's highlighted in our statewide, this particular issue. So yeah, it's out there and available.
One more thing for us to talk about from your statewide e-newsletter, and while it might not be agriculture, it is really important to Kansas, and that is Walk Kansas.
Yes, it is. And so, when we think about the breadth of K-State Research and Extension, we're absolutely supporters of individual and community health. And so I think this was a really creative thing that was spearheaded by Sherilyn Jackson a few years back, but taking advantage of kind of the 400 plus miles across Kansas and developing an opportunity for teams of people to come together and to really just get active in a number of ways. And so the teams are encouraged to do activities that collectively add up to that 423 miles that are the width of Kansas.
And Ernie, also wanted to mention that K-State's pretty quiet right now because most of the students aren't on campus.
That's right. This is the week of spring break, and so, yes, things are quiet. The parking's a little easier, but we're reminded as we come back from spring break, we're halfway through the semester, and I've been at K-State now 40-plus years, and every year it feels like the time from spring break to spring commencement always flies by and is faster than the first half of the semester. So, this is an important time, particularly for graduating seniors. They transition, they finish their college years, and they head out for their first post-college career job. And so that really drives home what we're all about here at K-State, and that's adding value to the lives of young people.
Ernie, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and give us a recap of your monthly statewide newsletter.
Oh, super to be with you. Thank you.
That was Dean of K-State's College of Agriculture and Director of K-State Research and Extension, Ernie Minton. In today's show notes on agtoday.net, I will put a few different links. The first one will be if you'd like to check out some of the resources from K-State's Office of Farm and Ranch Transition, and their website is www.agcansitions.org. That is Cansitions with a K. I will also put a link if you'd like to find out more information about Walk Kansas. Before we cut to a break, we are now going to be joined by USDA's Rod Bain and Undersecretary for Marketing and Regulatory Programs, Jenny Moffitt, as she discusses the USDA's Local Agriculture Market Program, which is now accepting applications for grant awards through March 14th.
USDA Local Agriculture Market Program grant applications are now being accepted for the latest round.
The Agricultural Marketing Service is making available and announcing the funding availability of $24.7 million in grant funding through 3 of the LAMP programs.
That's Undersecretary for Marketing and Regulatory Programs, Jenny Moffitt. She discusses the various Agriculture Marketing Service programs offering LAMP grant awards.
The Farmers Market and Promotion Program, the Local Food Promotion Program, and the Regional Food System Partnership Program, all administered by AMS. The goal is to support local and regional food systems as they develop, coordinate, and expand producer-to-consumer marketing, local and regional food markets, and local food enterprises as well. That can be things like supporting business plans, feasibility studies, value add, agritourism, and figuring out what an agritourism plan might be for a region. The regional food system infrastructure, community collaboration, capacity building for things like farmers markets, as well as other capacity building within a region. It's about connecting and cultivating regional food systems.
In terms of details regarding applications for any or all of these grant programs,
applications are due May 14th. Potential applicants, anyone who's interested in applying, can go to the Agricultural Marketing Services webpage to learn more about these programs
at www.ams.usda.gov, while grant applications are to be submitted via www.grants.gov. Also, AMS has a turnkey option that is more standard and expands access for potential producer and organizational applicants.
Something new that we've instituted last year, really in response to some feedback that we heard about the complexity of applying for federal dollars. So we now have a turnkey option for several of the programs. And basically, if an applicant is looking to do specific activities related to recruitment and training or specific activities related to marketing and promotion, they can apply through this turnkey option, which is a smaller dollar amount, and it also is more standard in application. So that small producers, small organizations, people who are supporting new and beginning farmers and ranchers, historically underserved producers, veterans producers, and underserved producers at large can have the access to the program that is so important.
Additional resources for the local agriculture market program are available, such as the LAMP navigation tool via this web address, www.ams.usda.gov/services/grants/LAMP. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but stick around because we have more for you ahead.
From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network. Along with Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. 2 different groups or broods of cicadas, Brood 19 and Brood 13, will emerge across multiple states this spring, including Missouri, Oklahoma, and Iowa. K-State horticultural entomologist Raymond Cloyd has witnessed this a couple of times, and he says the emergence is definitely worth seeing. Raymond, we talked about this last time, but it's something that's still going to happen. It is the cicada, I guess we would call that the rotation is coming back again.
Yeah, Jeff, what's going to happen this year, you probably have heard from the mainstream media that we have the 2 broods coming out, Brood 19 and Brood 13. Now, 19 is going to be about 11 states, mostly in the southeast and in the eastern part of the country. And then the 13 is going to be about 4 states. And the closest states will be Missouri and Oklahoma. Now, I don't know where in those states will be, but it's going to be somewhere there. Kansas has a Brood 4, but that's not scheduled to come out till like 2032. But I really recommend you go down there and see these emergences because there's like billions of these cicadas. And, of course, cicada adults can fly. And what's going to happen is the females will lay their eggs into branches of trees, primarily oaks, and then the nymphs will emerge and then crawl back to the ground, and that's where they'll reside for 13 or 17 years. And then they'll emerge again in whatever time period they're supposed to. The periodical or 13, 17-year cicadas are smaller than the dog-faced cicadas, and the eyes are more orange-reddish, so they are smaller. So they're very easy to distinguish from our normal dog-faced cicadas or dog-day cicadas.
And something that, if you have a chance to see, definitely worth seeing.
Absolutely. Even if you're not an entomologist, it's still worth to go down and see billions. And they won't bite you. They're plant feeders, basically. But seeing hordes, I've seen 2 of them in my career, and it is quite a sight to see.
Something else to keep an eye on are clover mites, something we'll be seeing relatively soon.
Actually, Jeff, we're seeing them right now. I've got a number of calls now. Clover mites are mites. They come into the home. They're red. They have very long front legs, and they don't bite, and they dry out, but they can be a tremendous nuisance. We've gotten a number of calls, I think the most I've ever gotten in the last couple of years. And so what we recommend, now they feed on turf grass. They do feed on turf. So keep your turf grass about 3 feet away from the foundation, especially the south side. Maybe put some rocks or gravel between the turf and the home so it makes it hard for them to crawl across. And then you can have somebody spray like a barrier treatment of an insecticide to repel them. In your home, don't spray, but you can seal the cracks and crevices and also put the double-sided sticky tape on one window seals to trap them. If you do have any questions, you can always contact the Extension office. But I do want to tell you, do not buy bombs or light them off. Contact the Extension office or a pest management professional to deal with clover mites. And again, there are nuisance coming in. They won't last very long, especially when the humidity is low. But I've got a number of calls. They come in and they're very irritating to people.
Something that we routinely see, or is this unusual?
Well, that's a great question because in the last 5 years, my phone calls and emails, I've had more. We have an extension publication that people can download. If you go to Clover Mites, Kansas State University extension publication, it'll probably be the first or second one. And it's a 2-page extension publication, has everything you need to know about clover mites. Nothing is a guarantee, but some of the strategies I've already mentioned will definitely alleviate, hopefully, the clover mites coming into your home. And normally they'll start in spring, and then we'll get another influx in the fall.
And eastern tent caterpillar, another thing to be looking for.
Yes, as we get closer to the leaves coming out of trees, the eastern tent caterpillar is one of our earliest caterpillar defoliators. If you drive around the back road, you'll see these nests in the trees, the crotches of trees, and that's where the caterpillars are. They come out, very ornate-looking caterpillars, blue lining. They feed primarily on plants in the Rosaceae family, cherry, crabapple, plum, things like that. So the best way to deal with them is just open up the nest and let the birds eat them up, or you can spray once you've opened up the nest.
And the damage significant?
Because they're feeding early on, Jeff, and the leaves are coming out, and if they feed on the plant before they can develop leaves, they can cut off the plant's ability to manufacture food photosynthesis. So that can be a problem if you have continued removal of the leaves on your crab apples or apple trees, yes.
That's K-State horticultural entomologist Raymond Cloyd with information on the double emergence of cicadas this spring, clover mites, and eastern tent caterpillars. And that'll do it for this edition of Agriculture Today. For Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. This is the K-State Radio Network.